Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Brittany McAllister. I'm the Director of Adult Programming at Kent Memorial Library. And I just wanted to welcome you here today and let you know that most of you are here thanks to a community member named Wendy Murphy. Wendy is currently a member of the board of the Kent Land Trust and a volunteer for Kent Memorial Library. She is also thoroughly invested in solar energy, having transitioned in 2019 to a 16-panel ground-mounted solar array. It supplies Eversource with more electricity than Wendy consumes, resulting in a token electrical bill monthly and an annual payback check for the system. Noticing how few of her neighbors had made the move despite the many tax incentives and rebates offered, she thought that maybe there were just too many hurdles in the way for busy people to get involved. So in the spring of 2022, with the enthusiastic support of the Conservation Commission and the Library Board, she approached PACE, People's Action for Clean Energy, for help in making the sometimes mysterious, rapidly developing world of renewable energy technology more understandable to the public. She contacted a number of like-minded local friends and colleagues to join her, and they formed the exceptional team that has made today's gathering possible. So I just wanted to give a special thank you to Wendy, and then our team, Bernie Pelletier, Deborah Rowe, Mark Scully, Dana Slaughter, Julie Saxton, thanks so much, Doug Rick, and Jesse Singabell for working so hard to make today possible. Before we introduce our first speaker, I just want to mention a couple of things. We will have some time at the end of this for questions and answers, so write them down, keep track. We'll have a handheld mic, and so just raise your hand and I can find you. You can ask your questions to Bernie at the end, and we'll also have some professionals outside after the program as well. Secondly, in continuing today's important conversation about creating a greener world, the library is excited to be co-hosting an event back here in the auditorium at Penn School, Saturday, November 19th. Douglas Brinkley, renowned presidential biographer and historian, will speak about his latest book, Silent Spring Revolution. John F. Kennedy, Rachel Carson, Lyndon Johnson, Richard Nixon, and the Great Environmental Awakening. So you can register for that at kentmemoriallibrary.org. And now I'm honored to introduce our first speaker, who needs little introduction. Our state representative for the 64th District, Maria Horn, currently serves as the House Chair of the Public Safety and Security Committee and as a member of both the Environment and Energy and Technology Committees. Before being elected to the state legislature in 2018, Horn worked in the nonprofit sector, government, law, and finance. She has served in all three branches of government and has crafted, negotiated, and pushed forward a broad array of legislation that protects our environment. Some examples include raising bottle deposits to 10 cents, applying deposits to more products and providing more money to towns and redemption centers to ensure these products don't wind up in the landfill, helping to approve more anaerobic digesters on farms to address food waste and stormwater runoff, regulating the harmful chemical PFAS, I think they're pronounced PFAS, and expanding the Connecticut Green Bank to give towns increased ability to invest in green infrastructure. So please join me in welcoming Maria Horn.
And thank you for that. I usually, I'm going to say as a preliminary thing, I usually do not, I have a tendency not to speak from notes, but when Wendy invites you to do a presentation, you come correct. So I have, this is filled with, one of the things I wanted to say about just introductory way is how important this kind of meeting is, because this area, particularly energy policy, is incredibly complicated. So I have been on the Environment Committee throughout my time in the legislature, but I joined the Energy and Technology Committee just last year, in part because of a lot of work I've done in broadband. And that's another topic for another day. But coming into that committee, you are immediately hit with a wall of jargon and complexity. Some inescapable and some by design. The lobbyists, the people who will lobby for the energy industry in Connecticut are full-time, highly compensated, and neither of those apply to the legislators who sit on that committee. So, sure. Thank you. Can you hear me now? Okay. If I close this, is this I shut Kent down, sorry. So it's very complicated, and it's easy to get to start to read the details and think, oh, I just can't do this, I'm going to wait for somebody to explain it to me and throw up your hands and walk away. and has been said there are so many, as Wendy, I think in the introduction, has noticed, there are a lot of incentives that are being put out there both from the federal government and the state government that are trying to help people make decisions that will drive better results for our environment. And so this kind of meeting that both, I'm going to talk mostly sort of about the bigger picture, and then Bernie's going to get us into the real details about how to make it work here in Kent. But I think it's really, really important to sit and to try to get comfortable with all the things that are happening in this space. So the three things I'm going to try to cover, basically what it is we're trying to do here, and then what's happening nationally and what's happening in Connecticut. And I want to first just note, credit where credit is due. I did write up on a bunch of articles, brushed up on the legislation we passed, other things in preparation for this. But I also listened to a podcast which I was recommending to people, which if you haven't listened to, it's Ezra Klein's interview with Jesse Jenkins. It's called, Klein calls it the best guide to decarbonization ever. And it really is. And one of the things why it's so good, if you haven't listened to it, I recommend if you have a drive ahead of you, you can put it on and listen to it, is that it just goes back to first principles. Rather than assuming, a lot of people who work in this space, it's easy to get immersed in it, and then you enter midstream in that conversation, and it's hard to understand. He goes back, and so I'm going to give, I'm hereby giving him a big fat footnote and citation for some of the things I'm going to cover today, because I think it's important first, as a matter of first principles, just to talk about what it is that we're trying to do here, and it really is about decarbonization. So about 2/3 of the energy that we, our demand for energy in the U.S. is for liquid and gaseous hydrocarbons. That's natural gas, gasoline, diesel. And so the only way for us to start to change that number is to reduce demand for those fossil fuels and to sort of incentivize other energy consumption, so clean energy consumption. So I want to make and what is probably an obvious point to this sophisticated group about power and about electrical power in general, because I now drive an EV, which I'll get to later. And I do get a lot of people who say, well, fine, it's electric car, but do you know where that energy came from? So it's useless if you don't know where the energy came from. And it is important how the energy was generated, and we're going to be talking about that. But it's also important that the use of electricity, my consumption of that electricity in my car releases no CO2. It releases no pollutants into the air. And so that's part of the equation. At the point of consumption, what is happening? Are we polluting the environment? Are we creating global warming? The other part of it is how we generate that electricity. And of course that matters. And that's all about making sure that this electricity is clean electricity. And so it's already the case that about 40% of the energy we consume is clean energy, carbon-free sources rather. So that's nationwide. That's about 40% of that is 40% of our electricity is already carbon-free. About half of that nationwide comes from nuclear, and then the rest is hydropower, a big chunk of it, and then a smaller but growing sector is of course wind and solar. In Connecticut, that 40% holds true, but 38% of that is Millstone, the nuclear plant, and then the rest is solar and wind. So Connecticut has a very particular situation. Another nationwide trend that I hope we continue to focus on is that over the last decade, we've seen a 90% decline in the cost of both solar photovoltaic technology, or PV technology, and lithium-ion batteries, which are the major component in cost component in EVs, electric vehicles. Sorry, there's so many acronyms in this business. Please write down. If I say an acronym that you don't understand, please write it down and make sure you ask later. I try not to use them, but it's easy to get caught up in that world. So that's a big decline. Now in Connecticut, I've seen different statistics that the cost decline may be 50%, maybe more than that, but that's a really substantial decline, and it changes incentives and it changes access to these kinds of technologies. And so I want to talk about Connecticut overall. First of all, we launched the first green bank in the nation, and that's a pretty big deal. We are now, I think, I would argue that we went through a little lull in terms of our push in this department. And we are now entering, I think we passed some important legislation this past term that is really revamping that process. So Connecticut also is committed to getting all of our energy from zero carbon sources by 2040. That was a sort of theoretical commitment before, and this year we made it permanent and we made it law. So it's embedded in our law. And then I'm hoping Bernie or maybe somebody can provide more illumination on this, but I read some statistics about our weather in Connecticut actually to just emphasize the feasibility of doing this, that actually Connecticut receives more sunshine than most of the solar farms in Germany, with an average of close to 4.5 hours of direct sunlight for every 10 square feet. So we are not, I know in New England we tend to think we have a certain kind of weather, but it's important this is really workable for us. And then some general statistics. We have currently, and these are statistics from 2021, 1,137 megawatts of solar installed in Connecticut. That is enough to power 165,593 homes. That puts us 22nd nationally. We used to be higher. We've dropped in the rankings a little bit, so go Connecticut. We hope you all come out of this conference today and help get our stats back up. So what's happening nationally generally? And here I'm going to talk a little bit mostly about the Inflation Reduction Act, and a little bit about the Infrastructure Act. And I'm dealing from a 30,000-foot perspective. There's a lot of detail, but there are some things that I think it's important to just understand. So at its core, what the Inflation Reduction Act does in this area is make clean energy cheaper. And so as a general matter, you can do that two ways. Economists, will argue that you ought to something like energy, say carbon-based energy, ought to be priced to include all of the costs associated with it. Global warming, pollution, all that should be built into that price. So that's one way to do this, to increase the cost of those fossil fuels so that really those who are producing them consuming them or producing them bear the true costs of those fuels. The other is that's hard, that ends up being hard often on the wrong people, unfortunately, who are stuck in systems that are fossil fuel based, like heating oil, for example. That's a slow thing to change. So the other thing is to provide subsidies and to make those clean energy cheaper, and to set up incentives so that both businesses and consumers are positioned to make decisions to gradually chip away at that demand for fossil fuels. Because it really can't, we have to be realistic that we just can't sit back and say, shake our finger, it's the right thing to do, and expect people and businesses to just make the decision because it's the right thing to do. It has to be economically, fiscally sustainable for them. And so these subsidies are really, really important. There are also, as a broad matter, there are a lot of standards in the Inflation Reduction Act, which some people have criticized. So, for example, with respect to electric vehicles, there's a lot of standards in there about how they have to be domestically sourced, domestically produced, or the materials in the batteries have to be domestically sourced. In that area in particular, as a general matter, and I've had conversations with several of you in the lead up to this, about the search for electric vehicles and how hard they are to find. That in reality, because of those domestic sourcing requirements, there aren't going to be that many vehicles that meet those standards in the next couple of years. But the demand is already so high that we are already, you can't find these vehicles. So the hope is that by the time supply catches up with demand, we are going to be able to build some supply chains in the United States, which is where they should be built. We really do not want to be dependent on China for building these things for a whole host of reasons. So it's the hope that it's not really going to affect the market too much in the coming years, but it'll catch up once we can rebuild those supply chains. So the infrastructure bill also adds to this by helping people. It has some incentives for building out public charger networks, which you have to make it possible for somebody to drive an electric vehicle if you don't have chargers available for people. It's really not workable. So I wanted to also just talk about some statistics on EVs overall, which is that according to Consumer Reports, it's cheaper to own an EV today over the first 5 years already. Now that's to compare an electric vehicle to a comparable internal combustion engine. it's the fuel savings. It's also the maintenance savings, which over a 5-year, even though there is a premium for purchasing an electric car up front, $5 to $10,000. That's changing already. But that gets paid for over 5 years. So it's already over a 5-year time horizon more cost effective to buy an EV. We expect with market changes and with the subsidies built into both federal and largely federal legislation and also state legislation, that time period should get flattened down to a much shorter period in the next 5 years or so. Now, I want to also just note that, and this is a lot of details, so bear with me. Also, with respect to electric vehicles, those domestic sourcing requirements only apply to consumer purchases. They don't apply to businesses. So really the bigger users of fossil fuels and the bigger producers, buses, trucks, that are owned by businesses, that can get started much more quickly. And I think that's important not to forget. We also had, Mr. Heat Pump was walking around a minute ago. I just want to touch a little bit on heat pumps because there are subsidies for heat pumps in the Inflation Reduction Act as well. And just to note some basic things about heat pumps, which is a lot of people who hear the word and think, what the heck is a heat pump? We already use heat pumps, air conditioners are heat pumps, refrigerators are heat pumps. They're already out there. So this is it's a way for, again, it does not, unlike your oil burner, it does not release CO2 into the atmosphere when it's consumed, and it heats homes. And it's also the other thing that we need to remember is that both, and this is true of EVs and of heat pumps, how much dramatically more efficient they are than internal combustion engines. And the internal combustion engine only gets about 15 or 16% of the energy in your gas tank gets into the mobility or traction that you're getting from your car. And with heat pumps and electric vehicles, it's virtually one. So to get anywhere near this goal of net zero, and again, net zero is it's net zero. So net zero carbonization, which means as much as possible using clean energy sources, so that those are not reducing carbon. And then to the extent that we can't, there are certain intractable parts of our economy that will be either very hard or impossible to switch out of, to use technologies like carbon capture that can maybe offset those. It's a complicated endeavor, and it's going to require a lot of consumer decisions at the grassroots and a lot of big picture policy decisions to produce bigger grids and to change our electric grid as well, which a lot of which is creating more wind and solar facilities. So I want to talk a little bit about what we did in Connecticut in the last session. And excuse me, I'm going to be running through sort of a list here. So among the things we did, you will be hearing from the Green Bank, but we expanded the types of projects that the Green Bank program may finance to include EV charging stations. And that's just became effective a few days ago. We also expanded 2 state clean energy programs, which can help work on community solar type infrastructure that is shared by many people. We increased the caps on those and increased the funding for them. We also changed there's another acronym for it that I'm not sure what it stands for, but it's called the CHEAPER program, which is basically Connecticut's subsidy program for the purchase of all kinds of various types of electric vehicles. And we have expanded eligibility for that. We've added e-bikes. It's one of the things that I learned a lot about in this last session. In particular, in urban areas, an e-bike, much lower price point, and it can really substitute for a car for somebody who really can't make that investment in a car. And it can get someone around in an urban area that has public transportation, which is not true for us. And we increased funding for that program, and we made it permanent, also important. We also required, we have new requirements for EV charging infrastructure in various kinds of buildings. So essentially, state buildings all new state construction is going to require EV charging stations. School construction, certain types of commercial buildings or multi-unit residential, they're all going to have to include EV charging stations in their plans. We also have several pieces of the legislation that work on the electrification of the state fleet and also school buses. So with respect to state cars, we accelerated the schedule. Now all 50% of all cars and light duty trucks owned by the state need to be zero emission by 2026. It's an ambitious goal. It was 2030. And then we set up several incentives for zero emission school buses, which is really important that's a health issue for a lot of kids in a lot of urban areas. But our schools in our area are already, making motion to make use of those subsidies. So I want to close just before we get on to the meat of today's presentation with just my own, the importance of just the little decisions. So I bought an electric vehicle in May. And at first I, did all the research and said, well, just baby steps, I'll do a hybrid. And then I realized, no, what I really want to do is get rid of the internal combustion engine. I want to just take the lead. And once you do that, I'm now aware of all the things that I pay attention to now that I drive that car. I'm aware of my own driving habits and what makes my efficiency more or greater, because I drive a lot, and so I am watching to make sure that I can make it, from place to place, because I have to plan to make sure that I'm going to have access to power when I need it. So I pay attention to how I drive, how I use my climate control in the car, so just turning it on all the time. And I pay attention to infrastructure. I now know what kinds of companies have invested in making sure there are high-functioning EV charging stations, whether they're high-speed stations, whether they aren't. And it's changed my attitude towards sort of different kinds of companies that have invested in this. And it also makes me pay attention to the infrastructure that's necessary to generate, to generate that power. So I can't tell you how many, this is anecdote, but a lot of friends of mine who have, and this is another, if you buy an EV, it's like joining a club. And in fact, I think there is an EV club. I just got that here and there. But the first time I bought mine, the first time I went to a public charging station, I met two families. Then I went to another one, and I met other two families. And they, you share tips and tricks and which ones work better and which, charging app you need to download. And it really is, we're all helping each other because we're all invested in something that feels like we are part of, not only made a decision that's economic for us, but that feels good. And we want to be part of encouraging other people to do it too. So you become a bit of an evangelist. And evangelizing people today, it reminded me of why they should buy an EV. So there are several people that I've spoken with that after buying their electric vehicles and watching, of course, their own electric bills, they built solar arrays. Because now they're thinking about it. Having made this decision to buy this EV, and paying attention to how you're consuming fuel, now we start thinking about, well, where did this electricity come from? How did it get here? And what's that infrastructure look like? And could I build a solar array in that field in my backyard? Or maybe I could encourage show up for that town vote because they're voting on creating a solar array at the transfer station. And it is really, it's those kinds of I just want to close with, never underestimate the power of all those little decisions. Becoming engaged in an issue and feeling part of it, encourage other people to participate in it, to encourage your town to invest in this kind of infrastructure, and then to help push for the really big picture things that we need to do, because we are going to have to do some dramatically large solar and wind arrays in this country if we're going to get anything near to net zero. So I think it helps build political consensus for that as well. So again, I'm really grateful that Wendy's doing this meeting. I think it's a really powerful thing for us all to do, and I hope we all come out of the presentation this afternoon with a to-do list. So thank you.
Thank you, Maria. And just thank you all again for being here. Like Maria said, it's so important that we're, as a community, getting on board with this and learning what we can do as individuals and then in the big picture as well. And our next speaker I want to introduce, Bernie Pelletier, is Vice President of PACE and manager of the 100% Connecticut Project. Bernie retired from Travelers Insurance Company in Hartford, Connecticut after a 35-year career as an actuary. Bernie received his BS in Mathematics and Peace Studies from Manhattan College and a master's in public policy from Trinity College in Hartford. He is a fellow of the Casualty Actuarial Society and has carried his quantitative approach into the 100% Connecticut project. He lives with his wife in West Hartford and serves on that town's Clean Energy Commission. So please welcome Ernie to the stage.
Brittany, and I'll just say I think the 64th is very well represented. Maria, that was really an exciting talk to hear. I had no idea we have legislators like this. Bear with me while I put in my secret password. That would be the first. Is it back? Yeah. All right. I'll just to pick up on a comment that Maria made, if instead of talking about clean energy, we're talking about going to the moon, we need big companies and we need a government. But if we're going to get to where we go, net zero by 2040, we can do some of that with big companies and government. But we can't do it without the people that are in this room. Because we're talking about literally changing every car, most of the cars, changing every home or most of the homes to be much more efficient than they are now. So that can't happen in Washington. It really can't even happen from Hartford. It has to happen in Kent and Sharon and Litchfield and all these towns here. So what we're going to talk about today is, I'm going to call it an action sandwich. I'm going to tell you, like I just told you, that what you do is critical to whether we get to the outline that Maria posed for us. Sort of the prompt for this was Wendy calling us up April 11th. And one of the services that PACE offers as part of that 100% Connecticut project is we do town energy plans. And so we did that for Kent. Just recently, we gained the ability to do that for every town. So we can do that for 169 towns now in Connecticut. So those of you who aren't from Kent, let us know if we can do the same thing for you. So I'm going to give you a super high-level run-over of the results of that energy plan that we did. That energy. Louder. How about now? All right. So I'm going to give you a high level of the energy baseline study that we did. We're going to talk about how you use energy now in this town. Talk about ways that you can reduce energy consumption, because that's actually the most important and the most powerful thing that we can do. We waste about 2/3 of our energy now. So if we stop that, we're way ahead. We'll talk a little bit about how you can make energy locally. I have to tell you, I played this past my dad last night. He's 91. He says, "Bernie, what the hell are you talking about? How are we going to make energy locally?" Well, of course, it's solar. And then I would say the majority of this session is going to be action steps. When you came in, you received from Deb a sheet. I want to tell you that no matter who you are, rich, poor, man, woman, homeowner, business owner, apartment dweller, condo owner, don't have a car, have a car, there's a step on here that you can walk out of here and do. And ringing around in a sort of threatening sort of way, we have a lot of experts here that can help. I can take you part of the way, but we have a number of people, and I'll introduce them as I get to these remarks. So our goal is really to take us from where we are today, just as Maria laid out, where we have a lot of fossil fuels on our grid, not that much wind, we're working on that, not that much solar, have some nuclear. Where we want to go is really to a grid that is renewable, that we don't have to worry about socioeconomic, we don't have to worry about international constraints on oil or natural gas or anything like that, because what we're producing is either in the town itself or in the region itself. It's very local. And so as you think about this, and this is to you personally, I would ask all of you, you can start with that piece of paper that you have in your hand, develop a baseline plan for yourself. If you listen to sort of Maria's personal journey once she got that car, I would venture to say most of us are energy unconscious. We could afford energy. Well, up until recently, we could afford energy. We didn't think about it. As long as we had it, we used it. Now that time is really past. We should really look at what we're using, make a plan to be more efficient, conserve, electrify, and also at the same time think about investing in renewables. That's a personal thing. So, energy today in Kent. We really, I want to tell you that this plan that we did has really three major sort of inputs from Kent itself. We have every building in Kent. We got that from your tax assessor here. And we have that for most of the towns in Connecticut. So we know commercial buildings from residential buildings. We know how many square feet. We know how they heat. We know how many stories they have. We know how much their roof area is. And so we can make an accurate statement about how much energy you're using now. We have the same list for for vehicles. And so we know how many electric vehicles you have, how many internal combustion, and how many plug-in hybrids that you have. And in addition to that, you don't have natural gas in Kent, but Eversource, the utility in this part of the state, provides us each year with the number of kilowatt hours that are consumed town by town. So we take those ingredients and put them in, and we have this is very high level, but beneath this is literally sort of a building by building look at Kent. And so as questions come up, and as Wendy and her team continue to work on this project, we're going to be able to provide deeper levels of insight. You can see that we supply, that the way we consume energy now is 20% roughly is electric. We use 44% for heating ourselves and 37% for transportation. This number won't mean much to you, but if you convert oil, propane, all that into electric energy, you can do that. For example, a gallon of gas has 33.7 kilowatt hours of electrical energy in it, so you can do those kind of transformations. Kent each year consumes 124 gigawatt hours of power. It's a lot. And what does that translate to in terms of your day-to-day life? Well, I'm going to give you two ways to think about that amount of energy. One is how much does it cost you now to get it? And the other day on Friday, as we were gearing up for this, Wendy wanted me to point out that we sum total this column to be $15.2 million a year across Kent residents and Kent businesses for energy. So that's money that goes out the door and never comes back. Wendy wanted me to point out that it looks like prices are just going to go up. Julie Saxton pointed out that they've got 30 plus cent electricity up in Massachusetts now, and that might be coming our way. So 15.2 is pretty bad, but it could get worse. So we have the sharp stick of financial imperative driving us to make better choices. If you take that $15.2 million of annual expenditure and by the way, that is the municipal operations, the schools, Kent School would be in that, Kent Center School would be in that, any businesses, as well as any residents. So I take the whole kit and caboodle, and a little bit inappropriately, but it's government work. We divide by the number of residents, so that means in this number is the cost of businesses along with your own consumption. It boils down to $5,400 per resident. That's a lot of money, in case you didn't know. The other metric that we want to take that energy consumption today and translate it into carbon dioxide or greenhouse gas. Maria sort of indicated that we have to stop doing this. I hope this just emphasizes the point that she made. Without going through all the statistics on the page, when you do the same exercise and just take Kent's annual production of greenhouse gas and divide it by the number of residents, that's 12 tons per resident. We don't count pets in that statistic, but it is all human organisms in this town. There's a lot that's not in that 12 tons. For example, if you've taken a plane trip, that's not there. If you bought any goods from anywhere outside of Kent, the cost of manufacturing those goods is not there. So there's a lot that's not in there. It's a localized view of our impact of greenhouse gas. I will tell you another comment my father made is, that's impossible. And how can I, little me, produce 12 tons? I'm just gonna give you one possible statistic. It won't convince you, but at least get you thinking. If you burn a gallon of gas, nobody ever thinks about how much gas weighs because you put the nozzle in, you don't have to pick it up. But if you picked it up, it would be like picking up a gallon of milk. You know how that, you can feel how that is. When you burn it, you say, oh, it goes in the air. It doesn't weigh anything. But we all know from our basic chemistry that you take the carbon that's in that gallon of milk, if you will, that gallon of petroleum, and you marry it up with 2 oxygen atoms, you actually increase the weight of that by a factor of 3. So you take something that weighs about 7 pounds a gallon, your gasoline, roughly speaking. Essentially, every time you burn a gallon of gas, or a gallon of oil, or a gallon of propane, you emit 20 pounds of carbon dioxide a year. So don't trust me, never trust me, but go home and Google it and see what you come up with. And so with that statistic in mind, you can start to see the importance of decarbonizing every aspect of our life. Okay, that was the gloom and the doom. So we're on to March now. What are we going to do? We're going to chop our load in Kent in half. We're going to do that with 3 high-level strategies. First, heating and weatherization, we can cut that down 27%. Electric light and appliances, we can cut that load down 4%. And transportation and efficiency, we can cut that down 23%. Each of those 23, 4, and 27 is against the whole total. But in point of fact, going back to Maria's comment, when you get an electric vehicle or even a plug-in hybrid, you essentially cut your carbon by 2/3 because it is so much more efficient. And the people are not wrong when they say that we emit carbon when we use electricity, because we do today, but we won't tomorrow. We've heard by 2040, it's now legislatively set that we will be carbon free. So as we pull on this electric grid, it's going to get cleaner and cleaner and cleaner. Whereas that gallon of gas is going to be that gallon of gas now and in the future. So what we've done is we've taken that 124 gigawatt hours and we've cut it down to 57. That's more than half by taking these steps. Just to give you a visual, and I know it's too early for these Christmas colors. I probably should do it in orange, but if you just look at what we're doing, it's really a pincer movement. We are going to drive down year on year between now and this graph does not reflect the good work that our legislature did last year. It still has us ending in 2050, so we'll have to go back from this and say by 2040, we're going to be carbon neutral. As we drive that demand down, we're going to drive up the amount of renewables that we adopt. So we are going to come at this from both directions. It's entirely doable. How do we do this, you might say? I can see some of you are very cynical about this. I'm just kidding. So we have a noted energy advisor, Lisa Simpson, down there. And she's advising us that our first step should be to get a HES. What's a HES? Anybody know what a HES is? Home Energy Solutions. I don't know if Devin Williamson is there. Okay, we have some representatives from Eversource here who will be able to get you going on that path. The graph that you see is got 2, I'll just draw your attention to the yellow line and the green line. About 30% of people in Kent have taken advantage of this service, which you all pay for on your electric bill. That's better than statewide, where only about 22% of people have taken advantage of this. So that's the nice way to look at it. You're better than average. But better than average means that 70% of you here in Kent haven't gotten it. And so that's the glass half empty view of that. You see over there on the right, a whole variety of steps that you can take. Some of them very much enabled by the Home Energy Solutions. So changing out, moving to low, that doesn't mean uncomfortable. Water fixtures, Those of you who haven't changed your light bulbs, you should do that. I can tell you how to get any kind of light bulb for any kind of fixture. Actually, all you have to do is go to Amazon. Replace appliances. If you have a refrigerator that's more than 20 years old, you can cut your energy consumption in half just by buying a new refrigerator, and it will pay for itself. Add insulation. That's one of the least appreciated steps that we can take. And just cut down on the draftiness of your home. If we did this basic step, and this basic step cost this year $50, and if you're income eligible, so if you're below a certain income level, it's actually no cost to you. If everybody in Kent were to take that one step, which is entirely doable, you can do it before you leave today, we would take out each year 1,500,000 pounds of carbon. It's such a basic and easy thing to do. Maria talked a little bit about heat pumps. We are honored to have, this is actually the second public appearance that Mr. Heat Pump has made. It's a whole topic unto itself to talk about heat pumps, but as Maria said, we all know heat pumps, whether we know heat pumps or not, because there are air conditioners, there are refrigerators. These babies, though, operate in both directions, so they can heat or cool. There's a number of flavors of them. There's ground source, which that's called geothermal in some places. There's air source, which takes it from the air, and even here in the northwest corner, where I'm told it gets chilly, until you get to minus 451 degrees Fahrenheit, that's absolute zero. You have heat out there, and these heat pumps can pull it out of there and bring it into your house. So they're very effective. The magic of heat pumps, as we talk about reducing our heat, so Maria basically talked about the reduction in energy because of efficiency of EVs. The same magic pertains with heat pumps. It lives in this little ratio over here called COP, coefficient of performance or coefficient of production. And basically with a heat pump, you put in 1 unit of electricity and you get out 3 units of heat. Now, in another century, I might have been burned at the stake for saying something as heretical as that. But it is basic thermodynamics. You're not making heat as you do when you burn something, you are moving heat. So that's the magic that happens. And that's why it's so efficient and why we push it the way we do. It deserves a whole other session, but I'll tell you, I believe we have 2 people here who work for air source heat pump companies, and so I would advise you to just go up there and say what kind of house you have, and just get the lowdown on how these things could work for you. So we talked about residents, but let's talk about businesses now. Now here the story is a little bit, there's not that many, I think that according to what we got from your grand list, there's about 102 businesses in Kent, business buildings, I should say. It looks like only 15 of them have taken advantage of the commensurate efficiency programs, things that are like S. So, and in that regard, you're way below the state average. If you look on the right there, you can see a case study that shows one that was near to here. And you can see that White Flower Farms has cut down dramatically on their electric use and on their natural gas use. And they've purchased a lot of equipment and they've received a lot of incentives and rebates to do that. It's generally the case, almost always the case, that these things pay themselves back very quickly. So if you're a business owner, or if you work with somebody, if you know somebody that's a business owner, by all means, direct them to this, especially as we're going into this uncertain pricing of energy. Transportation efficiency. So Maria actually laid this out very, very well. This is a Chevrolet Bolt, which is the car that I have. I'm not going to go too much into the incentives because we have Barry Kresh from the EV Club of Connecticut, and he really knows it a lot better than I do, but there are cheaper rebates, and I don't know what it stands for either. It varies time to time depending on where we are and how the funds are drawn down. And there is a lot of talk in the Inflation Reduction Act, but it comes with a lot of conditions, as Maria started to outline. I'll just make the same point that Maria made with something slightly different. So what you see before you, and just think how far you've fallen in life. If you're sitting here on this gorgeous day and you're looking at EPA stickers, and you're listening to a retired actuary. It couldn't get much worse. Why? I just would like you to draw away two numbers from this EPA sticker: 98 and 37. You have the same car. This is a plug-in hybrid, so it might be a Prius Prime. It could be a Chevrolet Volt with a V. It could be a RAV4 Prime. It could be those cars that automatically can switch. The ones that you didn't buy. Why I call those two numbers out is you have the same driver. So it was me driving around. If I'm driving electric, I get 98 miles to the gallon electric. If I run out of my charge and I'm driving gas, I get 37 miles to the gallon. That ratio goes to the point that Maria underscored. That's the ratio of the pickup and efficiency that you get. Electric, you get 98 miles to the gallon. With gasoline, you get 37 miles to the gallon. I know some of you are thinking, but we don't measure electricity in gallons. At least not in Kent, we don't. And there's a translation that allows you to make that comparison: 33.7 kilowatt hours per gallon of gas. That's the thing that allows you to make a statement like they made here. So I'd like to talk a little bit about, well, let me stop and say what we've done now is we've outlined how much energy is being used in this town. We've made everybody feel really guilty. I hope that's what we're going for. We've outlined strategies that are within your grasp to undertake to cut that by more than half. So having reduced, now let's talk about producing. And that would be, to answer my dad's question from last night, how do we make energy locally? We do it with solar. In the report that we submitted to Wendy and the Conservation Commission, we really had three big animals. We gave them a sort of a routine estimate. We didn't do a detailed study, but we looked at the 1,400 homes that you have and assumed that 20% of them, so let's call that 280 homes, are suitable for solar. That's the number that we use. And that they put up a 7-phase system. We can calculate the roof area available in commercial structures. That's 500,000 square feet of roof area. And we have a conversion factor to see how much solar we can put there. And so we say that on homes and businesses in Kent, on their roofs, we can put 3.4 megawatts of power. The next big source of power, we would say, and I'll show you in more detail, if you look at your parking lots, now we've gone from talking about EPA stickers to now we're talking about parking lots. It probably can't get much worse. But in Kent, you have 13 parking lots that have more than 100 parking spaces. And we've calculated if you put a solar canopy on those, how much power you could draw off of that. We estimate that there's 5 megawatts that could be sited that way. And in our estimate that we submitted to Wendy and the commission, we just took half of that. The third sort of constituent of solar, we said, everywhere we go, there's a piece of degraded land. There's the opportunity for some big solar project. And so in this case, I call it the big project. I'm an actuary, I'm not an English major. Conceptually, that would take about 50 acres to set that up. And we'll just give a couple illustrations of how this might come to pass. And I would ask you to, as you look at these next couple slides, as you're sort of trying to absorb this, I want you to start to think about, we want to site solar in a responsible way. We don't want to cut down old forests. We don't want to displace farmlands. We want to take land that's already been used or in some way made not too good. So roofs, parking lots, rights of way, brownfields. You have a lot of people, I think you alluded to a neighboring town just put something up on a brownfield. Along highways, if you go to Massachusetts, you look at all the exchanges, they've got solar there. Enhanced agriculture. There's lots. For another day, we could talk about ways that you could have what they call fuzz and buzz, which is to say you have sheep and you have electric generation on the same piece of land. And there's a lot of others. So I just took an example of potential for solar. What you're looking at to the right, and if anybody is at Kent Center School or works there, this is just an illustration. I didn't do this on the way over. But you can see that I took the parking lot and I covered it with solar. They have wonderful flat building, roofs I should say, and I put solar on those. And that array, which I'm just doing for inspirational purposes, is about a 700 kilowatt array, which would produce about 864 megawatt hours of power each year. So a little less than 1% of what Kent consumes now across all your energy uses. So what I'm trying to get going is that roof, which has nothing on it, could supply approaching 1% of Kent's power. Just thinking about that. At the end of our conversation, I think Wendy was talking about how little municipal land there is in Connecticut. To be clear, you have about 3,000 people and you've got 49 square miles of land. So there's a lot of land. There's a lot of land beside this. But what I went to is 125 East. Anybody pronounce this?
Yes.
Scattical, which I think is near
Right there.
Yeah. And again, you might have other plans for this. This is as of this morning, Google Earth had it look like there was nothing going on the piece of land. And so I said, for purposes of today's discussion, let me take this piece of land, which is near a sewer treatment plant. Maybe people would want to live there, but maybe not. That guy, as an example of a big project, would produce each year 2.7 gigawatt hours. So remember, we've cut down Kent's energy use to 57 gigawatt hours. So we're looking at 5% coming off of this alone. So here's something that I don't know what people are thinking of doing with it, but if you want to put on your energy solar panel, I would encourage you to think of it as an opportunity. The solar energy study, I just want to illustrate this. I'll just go quickly because I've really talked about it. We, over the last 2 years, have looked at 8,400 parking lots in Connecticut. In Kent, my glasses on, but I think you have 13 of them. That would produce, if you sited on all of them, it would enable you to produce 5 megawatts of power. And it would give you 6.6 gigawatt hours. So it would be 10% basically of the reduced load. Another opportunity. So there again, next time you go into a parking lot, don't worry so much about how close you park to the store. Say, wow, this could really power a good percentage of Kent. And in terms of next steps for this group, one thing we've done in the town of Branford, which is really a superstar in this area, is we've just gone to business owners, find out who owns them, what the limitations are on them, and see what it would take to start to cite things like this. So, what we're seeing here is a beautiful chart. I have to credit this to Mr. Heatman who did this. I think you can sort of divine from our choice of our palette of colors. You've got the tans and the browns and the blacks, and those are fossil fuels. And down below, small but mighty and growing, you can see that we have rooftop solar, local carports, other local grid solar, grid wind, and grid nuclear. Grid nuclear, by the way, is that orange strip in there. It is carbon neutral now. We have it ending because the Millstone plant has 2 reactors. They have 2 expiration dates of 2035 and 2040. So we just sort of said that's the case. I don't know if that's actually going to happen. But for the moment, I'm glad that Millstone is there simply because it's a stable source of power that's not dependent on any foreign country. So that is another way to look at this, is that how we squeeze out the brown and the black and we increase it, the greens and the blues. Just want to just go back over the point that we started. This is the second call to action. This is a house. We actually took this from the graphic that accompanied a White House release on the Inflation Reduction Act. And just to quickly go around the horn on this, you can install rooftop solar. Right now you have, out of your 1,400 homes, last time we looked, you have only 59 solars. I think that might have been the prompt to get Wendy to try to push that number up. There's no reason it shouldn't be 200 or 300. You can replace your old stove, your old fridge, your old appliances with large savings. Crafty windows, doors, that's all part of this S program. Again, you have 70% headroom there to adopt that. You can take how you heat your hot water. A lot of people can take advantage, especially if you have an electric hot water heater, you should get an electric heat pump hot water heater, and you'll save a lot of money. You can plan now to make your next car an EV. I'll just add to the list of attributes that Maria laid out. One of the things, I have this 2017 Chevrolet Bolt. It's the fastest car I've ever had. I'm 68 years old, but once in a while, just for the heck of it, cover your ears, Maria. I just step on the accelerator. It's not a gas pedal, and I can make the tires go at 30 miles an hour. So it's a lot of fun for an old guy. Consider installing a battery backup. I think we have folks from the Green Bank here. Yeah, so they'll be able to talk about that. Again, please get a HESS to seal those air leaks, inefficient dryers, or even a clothesline. Believe it or not, clotheslines. And I would say among the most important things on this chart is insulate the attic and the basement. I hesitate to show you this slide. I guess what I would, because I'm not prepared to discuss it in detail, but I would ask you to start at the bottom of the slide and look at that link. That's the whitehouse.gov clean energy, inscrutable computer words. When you go to that link, and I think Brittany McAllister will be sending this out so you don't have to write it down, but you can if you want. There's an opportunity to sign up for updates. And some of the updates will be federal, and some of them will come out of our legislature and our agencies like DEEP, Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, Department of Housing, Department of Transportation. As the funds come from the federal government and they get turned into Connecticut programs. From what we can see though, there are credits and incentives for electric vehicles, for electric charging stations. I can say authoritatively that the 26% investment tax credit for solar is going up to 30. It's going to stay there for 10 years. So that says if you buy a $20,000 system, you'll get $6,000 back after paying taxes. There's credits for efficiency, home energy audits, heat pumps, and electric appliances. But I don't want to be too authoritative on those because I think there are a lot of conditions that apply that are not yet clear. We're going to come to a Q&A period, which I'm kind of looking forward to. I want to just point out that we have people here to help you today. We have folks, and I apologize, I know that this list has shifted around a little bit, but we have representatives from the Green Bank. We have Devon Willinson from Eversource, and she is the master of all things efficiency. And so she'll be there at a table. So by all means, and she would be the one that would talk about HESS and small business energy advantage. So you can't leave without talking to her. We have GMI Solar, and I think it's not Glenn, but it's Jack. Daniel. And they've got a very innovative system. We've got Barry Kresh, the EV Club of Connecticut. We've got 2020 Air Mechanical, Paragon Heating and Cooling. And from PACE, we have myself, Deb Rowe, who we've all met, and Mr. Heat Pump, aka President of PACE, and Mark Scully. We can talk about the other work that we do. And Wendy Murphy and the Conservation Commission Ready, set, go. I hope you've all at least made a mark on that paper that Deb handed you when you came in.
Hello?
It works. And to warn our contractor partners and agencies that come out to help us, I may call you down here, depending on the question, okay?
Hi,
I think you're good.
thanks for what you do so much.
Well,
But I know that the most efficient clean energy source is hydro. And
yes.
we're drowning a potential micro hydro here in New England. Anything happening with micro hydro?
I don't have any particular knowledge. I know the Housatonic River is here, and I crossed over it, and I sort of had a parallel thought to your own. I'm aware of a guy in Avon named Duncan Himmel, I think, who runs a small hydro company. So if you give me your contact information, Wendy, has that ever come up before? Has that ever come up before the Conservation Commission? Okay. Okay. And by the way, not every town would have hydro, but so this is a good thing to bring up.
Thank you. Just to clarify, I'm not only thinking of individuals and homeowners doing it, but every time I drive past a place like the New Preston Falls, it's relatively huge, it's running 24/7, and I know it could power that town, period. So I hope that other towns in this initiative might consider that.
I do believe that in Collinsville, which is down in Canton, along the Farmington River, they put in a form, a fish-friendly form of hydro, because we do worry about our little buddies getting ground up as they go through that thing. And I think they found a way around that. And I'm also aware there's another town in the eastern part of the state that has a hydro plant. So we should just do a little bit of investigating on that.
There's a small hydro facility in there.
Yeah, well, repeat that.
It's a small hydro facility, like I said, it's a fish-friendly corkscrew.
Yes, Archimedes screw.
I think it was done by New England Hydropower, and it was in Meriden.
Merit, okay. So there are some examples to point to. And I know there's engineering considerations. You have to look at the rate of flow, the steadiness of the flow, the amount of, it might be seasonal, what the drop off is, and things like that. But others have done it, so it's worth checking out.
Thank you. Again, can anybody hear me? Is it okay? I really appreciate, Wendy, your initiating this, and so on. Oh,
Just closer to the mic.
I want to thank everybody who's spoken, and also Wendy and her crew for putting this together. I think it's wonderful. I'm confused about the Green Bank, and I wondered if you could just briefly explain what that is.
Why don't I start talking, and why don't I have you come down so you can use the mic. But the Green Bank is a quasi public bank, as Maria noted. We were the first in the country to get this. They braid together state funds and private funds, and they turn those into programs, so you get things like low cost. Come on down.
I wasn't expecting to do a green bank intro. I'm Nick Graniger from the Green Bank. Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I'm not used to the microphone. I'll have a table outside too, so we can talk about connected green bank programs. But the Green Bank, quasi-public state agency funded, mostly through utility ratepayers. And we have various programs from financing to a few incentives. We used to have the residential solar rebate program. We have the Smarty loan, which I think Ralph's name was up on the screen. He's actually not here today, but I can talk about Smarty. And we have energy storage solutions for battery backup. In addition to that, it's mainly using small amounts of public funding to leverage private investment in clean energy projects. So sort of like a state investment infrastructure type bank.
bonds.
bonds.
Okay.
Now, I want to highlight the comment that Doug Rick made, which is the municipal assistance program. When I was flashing those things up, it's easy for me to sit in front of my computer and do that sort of baby engineering stuff. But for somebody like Kent or Sharon or Litchfield, you don't have a town engineer necessarily on staff. So the Green Bank really packages up your municipal buildings and gets you sort of well on the way. They handle a lot of the stuff that's really hard for small towns to do. So this municipal assistance program map is something I know that Kent has looked at. He's looking at it again. Okay, we can hear you.
Here, Kennedy, we can't hear you.
About 2 years ago, I think, I went to the Green Bank when they stopped doing residential solar, they switched to this new program, which I guess was MAP. And I said, we've got something like 12 municipal buildings in Kent. And some of them are screaming for solar, like the firehouse. It just sits there, staring at the sun exposure, and there's nothing there. So with the Green Bank, we went around and analyzed how much kilowatts they used per year. And out of those 12 buildings, I think it was, all the Kent Center School became eligible at that time because they spent lots of electricity all by themselves. The problem with the other buildings was they all had separate accounts with Eversource, and nobody could find a profitable return on investment to put these big expensive systems in each building. Since that time, just this spring, the law has changed, and so I'm going to go back to the Green Bank for the other 11 buildings. Oh, okay. I'm going to go back to the Green Bank this winter and say, now that you have this new regulation, and we can combine all these buildings, will you look at the firehouse and all these other structures again and see if they too can have solar? Certainly the transfer station has plenty of space for solar. There's lots of things like that. So we have to be on our toes all the time as the rules change, as the concerns about global warming change, as everything changes. I think I read somewhere, energy efficiency is not a destination, it's a work in progress all the time. Thank you.
Roger Liddell, Sharon, Energy and Environment Commission. We should not ignore the power of Eversource to help us in this journey. Among the 50 largest stockholder-owned electric utilities in the United States, Eversource has been number 3 or number 4 across the country. So there is tremendous ability to leverage off what Eversource is already doing. And to a point you made earlier, we've already paid for some of these programs in our monthly bills, and we're ignoring it. The other point, Maria, really aimed at you in terms of a legislative ask as a next step, is we've got to get meters that are intelligent at homes. Many of them are in businesses now. But the point is, all of us have grown up in our homes with kilowatt-hour meters, which in automotive terms is an odometer. It only tells you how many kilowatt hours you've used and tells you nothing about when you used it and what the prices were in the grid at the time of use. This is not a trivial matter. If you're an electric vehicle owner, a kilowatt hour meter that tells you nothing about when to charge efficiently is a disaster. So we have to get, it used to be a theoretical argument, but with the EV revolution now at hand, we must have intelligent meters so that all of us can make informed decisions about how we use electricity.
Would that be something that Eversource would be knowledgeable about, since most of us get our power through that system?
The utility has data real time. Let me give you an example. Please make a note of this website and you can begin to see it for yourself as soon as you log on. Go to the website cvx.org, which stands for Connecticut Valley Exchange. And you will see graphs of either Connecticut itself or all of New England in terms of the load that was forecast for today at yesterday's auction conducted by the independent system operator. So the utilities were, the load serving entities were forecasting tomorrow, this is yesterday's auction, today's load. And every 5 minutes, the graph will update in terms of where we are tracking on the load for Connecticut or New England. This is just the beginning of the revolution at hand with data now available to us. Real-time information which is actionable. So what we want is electricity.
Comment on both things that you said. First, how we think about the utility. CVX.com.
You're correct. I'm sorry. Yeah, cvx.com.
So just to say, on your first point about the utility, just think of the word. It's a utility. It's a public monopoly. It's managed by Public Utility Regulatory Authority, PURA. We have a wonderful commission now. And it matters how the public represents themselves at PURA hearings. We've learned that, Mark and Deborah and I and a lot of other people, I'm sure yourself, Maria. If we show up, Eversource is not bad. They're just a big company. In fact, when you meet Devon, you'll see that she's actually in charge of something called a Community Partnership Initiative. She is actively reaching out, enabling in all sorts of ways actions like this. So how we behave, to some extent, but just to say they're bad guys, it's just wrong. And then, yeah, we're entering into a much more complex era now. We are primitive with our leaders. I think UI to the south of us is a little bit more advanced than we are.
I just want to add on smart meters. Actually, I got something very sad. That I'm loud. No, I'm not loud. There are a number of us who have been working on smart meters in the legislature and push for them. But to Bernie's point about how we show up in the legislature, I got to tell you right now, when we debate smart meters, the people show up are the people who do not like 5G and who do not want that sort of are asserting the health. The potential health problems or just a lot of questions about that technology, and they dominate the conversation, and they do make it difficult for us when we're, again, these things are really complicated. But we do. There are a number of us who are. I think it is gaining momentum for us to help push for those because it is really important. But we need people who want them to show up.
And how do you get on that list?
Oh, so okay, I'm happy. So for those, I'll give myself a little plug. For those of you who aren't signed up for my state legislative newsletter, whether or not you live in my district, you should sign up for that. You can do that by going to my email, maria.horn@cga.ct.gov. And what I do on a regular basis is explain to people how to testify in a hearing. And so what it means is we will, I can say with near certainty, we will have a bill next year which involves smart meters. And when we do, each bill, every bill we do has to have a public hearing, and members of the public may sign up for them. Post pandemic, those hearings are now online. They are Zoom hearings, which means that people from the northwestern corner don't have to haul themselves all the way in Hartford and sit around all day long. You can sign up and testify remotely. We will probably move to a hybrid setting, but I doubt very much that we will lose that remote option for people because it's so much more convenient. So it is, pay attention. You can get on. There's a website. I know it's complicated, but there's a website for the assembly, and it has will try to make sure that I put out information about those bills so people can know when to show up, because we need you.
My question is, are there any current incentives for battery backup for solar systems to decentralize energy production for feedback to the grid on peak hours? And if so, where can I find them?
Residential.
Yes.
And it's 4:20, so I want to leave time for people, so maybe we'll go on for a few more minutes, and then I want people to be able to get to their tables.
So I'll have a table outside and I have materials to answer that question in more detail. But we do have a program called Energy Storage Solutions, and it's for commercial and residential customers to install battery backup, where when you don't need it, or when you don't need it for backup, the utility can use that to level out peaks in the grid. And when you do need it, it'll be available for backup. So you can tie it with solar or without solar. And I'll have some materials out there to pass out. So.
To look from Cornwall, and I think we've got the same kinds of situations. You guys are a lot larger than we are, and we're very spread out. So we have other issues, but I'm more interested in my home situation. Quick question. So the HES, that is a program to review my electricity usage.
No.
Right? No.
They'll look at your bills,
Yes.
they'll come into your house, Devin, if you don't mind, I'll start talking, Devin can pick up. They come in and they basically give you your whole house,
Mm-hmm.
appliances, all that Devin.
Oh, thank you very much.
Hi everyone, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I've seen a lot of microphone mishaps today, so I just want to be sure I'm not causing alarm. So I'm Devin Williamson. I'm marketing specialist for community engagement at Eversource. I work in the energy efficiency section. If you have a question about your bill, I really can't answer it, but I can help you get plugged into energy efficiency programs. So to your question, the Home Energy Solutions Assessment is basically a weatherization program. So a contractor shows up after you schedule an appointment, and I can guide people through how to sign up and get hooked up with a contractor. They come out to your home and they do a number of different assessments, as it is an assessment service. They look at any leaks, they see any cracks you might have with weather stripping, low flow shower heads, things like that. They make a whole host of also other recommendations just to make your house, which energy efficiency is about making your system smarter. And what's your system? Your system is your home. So it's about making your home smarter, and so it's taking a whole home look at what is going on. And they don't just look at your home, head on and say, oh, you've got a leak underneath your door. They're actually looking at the conditioned space as well as the unconditioned space. Conditioned space is where you live, and unconditioned is your attic, a garage that borders your conditioned space, basement, etc. So it's basically about making your home smarter and more efficient.
Thank you so much. That's great. One other question, which is ground source heat pump. What? Sorry.
Yeah, so I'm going to turn that over to Bernie, but heat pumps are definitely exploding right now, not literally. And I just want to be sure that you're getting the right information, because we're so excited to move into this technology. And I'll turn it over to Bernie, because he is the heat pump guru of Connecticut.
A little bit of tidal inflation there, but so a ground source heat pump. There's air source and there's ground source. And it is as simple as, where do they pick their heat from? The beauty of Mother Earth is, once you get down below, say, 15 feet into the ground, she stays constant at about 50-something degrees, pretty much year-round. And so in terms of thinking about where can I draw heat, it doesn't matter how cold it is outside. If you drill wells, and I just know somebody in West Hartford that just did this last week. They drilled 2 490-foot wells in his backyard. His wife had a litter of kittens because it made a mess out in the But they drill it, they put it in, and all he has is two little nozzles coming in from those wells into his house. They're gonna put heat pumps there, and he'll be heating his whole house and cooling his whole house. The cheapest, most efficient way, but to use, it's expensive to get.
So, who wanted our tables? I had some.
We got one?
Yes, sir.
All right. Who are you?
Paragon.
Paragon. So why don't we save that for the Paragon table? I'm glad you're here. We asked Dandelion, who's a big one, they couldn't make it though. Doug, you were gonna make a comment?
Just back to the home energy solutions, it's also the window into a lot of the other rebate
Yes.
programs.
Yeah, so I know where Doug is going with that. When the technicians leave after the process that Devin described, they essentially leave you with a guide to your house, like what's going on. They've done a health and safety check, by the way. Do you have any gas leaks, anything like that? And I'll call it a coupon book. It's not a coupon book, but for instance, insulation. You can get right now, Devin, $1.70,
Yeah, something like that.
$1.70 a square foot, which oftentimes is that's the whole cost. And it makes a profound difference, just a huge difference. Like
Can I add something to that?
maybe,
It's interesting to note that we didn't really have building codes strictly enforced before 1979. So if your house was built before that, you may not have much insulation in your walls at all. When we bought our house, it was filled with rags. It's an old house, okay? But it's worth investigating because there are factors that change dramatically.
you're going, Wendy, the point you're making, 79 and prior, there might have been some pink stuff or a few rags thrown around, but for all intents and purposes, you had some sheetrock and some boards, and nothing in between. And if nothing has been done since then, a huge, profound, multiples of savings. Okay, it looks like we've exhausted your patience. So let's head for the doors. Let's talk to Paragon 2020. Barry, who knows everything about EVs.
Great.